and this is why mobile gamers can't have nice things. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 worst smartphone game ports. For more gaming videos, check out our new spin-off channel, Mojo Plays, for in-depth reviews, thoughtful video essays, detailed character origins, and insightful commentary. Mojo Plays, games smarter. Porting games is a great way to give gamers access to titles across a wide variety of smartphone platforms. However, the lure of vast mobile marketplaces means that many companies often try to cash out on their IPs for a quick buck. They might have a great reputation, but the titles we're focusing on are the worst offenders of this practice. Number 10, Tomb Raider 1 and 2. Given the limited graphical and computing power of most phones on the market, it makes sense that companies would focus on bringing older titles to handheld devices. This is why Tomb Raider is a prime candidate for mobile porting. The graphics hold up decently well, but the second you get control of Lara, you'll realize that early 3D adventure games really weren't suited for touchscreen input. All of your available actions are mapped to virtual buttons, which are incredibly unintuitive and only slow the game down as you fidget and slip your thumbs across the slick glass screen. Ugh. And by the way, the nude code is a lie. Number 9, Jet Set Radio HD. We really wanted to love this one, but translating the complicated tricks into limited clustered inputs just means that it's too damn hard to pull anything off. You'll keep moving your thumbs from the buttons to furiously swipe graffiti into existence, but they end up getting lost on the way since there's no tactile feedback. This forces you to constantly look away from the action to reposition yourself, further adding to the frustration. While the game may work in the loosest definition of the term, it was essentially unplayable. Thankfully, Sega pulled this game, so no one will be tricked into putting themselves through it anymore. Number 8, Chrono Trigger. It's undeniably one of the greatest RPGs ever made, but even if you've never played it, you should probably not spend any money on this version. While the controls and graphics are perfectly fine, the actual performance of the game is abysmal for a 20-year-old release on hardware more powerful than the console it originally launched on, and we mean way more powerful. There are dropped frames all over the place, lag when you're in battle, and even though it's gotten better over time with patches, the game crashes way too often. There are plenty of emulators that'll do the job, so the fact that the official release fails this hard is kinda pathetic. Number 7, Streets of Rage 2. A poorly executed mess of bad decisions, Sega's 2D brawler has tons of issues that, while not game-breaking, continuously ramp up the frustration in the player. The user interface takes up half the screen and makes the game look ugly. The game stutters horribly when there are more than 2 or 3 enemies on the screen, all while assaulting your ears with some of the most oppressive soundtracks in gaming ever. Don't get us wrong, the actual game music is great, but having the poorly ported crackly mess blaring through your smartphone speakers on the other hand, not so much. Number 6, Final Fantasy Tactics: War of the Lions. .2D turn-based games are probably the best fit for a mobile experience, since you can essentially pause at any time and you can come back to it periodically for a few minutes at a time and not miss a beat. This should have been perfect, but between swiping through menus with inaccurate inputs and the lag that occurs when moving around the map and executing special skills, every action here takes forever to complete. If you're in the market for a mobile game, you probably don't want to commit a whole lot of time to it, and this completely defeats the purpose. Number 5, Wolfenstein 3D Classic. Due to their popularity, it only makes sense for FPS games to make the jump to mobile. But despite how good the original game is, this port is actually terrible. For some mind-boggling reason, movement speed is tied to your aiming sensitivity, meaning that you're either going way too fast or laughably slow. It's a serious problem when walking from point A to point B is a challenge in and of itself. and it makes the shooting of actual Nazis the most tedious and unfun activity. We know that it can be done well since there's plenty of better options available, so what the hell happened here? Number 4, Mortal Kombat X. By now, we all should know that the real console experience would never work on smartphones. But despite NetherRealm Studios tinkering, the radical gameplay changes in an effort to make this title more mobile-friendly ruined the core mechanics and controls. Fights are much shorter and more chaotic, and while the X-ray attacks and fatalities all made it into the final version, executing them is basically just a quick-time event, which completely takes the skill and sense of accomplishment out of performing the special moves. We want to outsmart and outplay our opponents, not just tap the screen as fast as we can until they're dead.
Fatality.
Number 3, Resident Evil 4. It's on every other device in your home, but the version in your pocket is by far the worst one. The series has never been the most fast-paced of shooters, but this port takes that notion to a whole other level. Switching between running, aiming, shooting, the inventory, and knifing down your enemies makes every encounter an insane drag. Since all the enemies are slowed down to compensate, even the bosses don't pose a threat, completely removing the tension that should be there. All this means that you really shouldn't be breezing through a game which focuses on struggling to survive. Number 2, Bioshock. If there was ever a game that everyone should experience, or at least see, it would probably be Bioshock. We wouldn't call this a lazy port by any means, but it's very disappointing. I mean, the downgraded visuals are to be expected, but the constant stuttering is incredibly annoying, and the game is just way harder than it needs to be. Switching between your plasmids and weapons on the fly takes much longer than on consoles, which really hampers the experience in many boss fights. Another daunting problem is the fact that a game like Bioshock requires immersion, and atmosphere is a tough sell on a 5-inch screen. Number 1, Painkiller, Purgatory. If you never played the franchise, it's basically about fast-paced demon killing in closed-off arenas, and it's pretty awesome in that respect. The weapons, soundtrack, and senseless violence all kick some serious butt, which is why it hurts so much that all of that was just thrown out the window for the mobile version. Sure, it really tries, but with improvised movement, clipping through enemies when performing melee attacks, and the unbearable lag that occurs when running on mid-range hardware, this is a Painkiller game in name only. Being a bad port is one thing, but with so few enemy varieties, ugly graphics, and poor optimization, this is also a lazy one, and that is inexcusable. Do you agree with our picks? Check out these other great clips from WatchMojo and subscribe for new videos every day.